Honeybees are a wonderful and vital part of our lives. We all know that bees make honey, which we use for lots of different things, but did you know that honeybees are responsible for pollinating the crops that make up our food supply? So honeybees are one of our most precious resources because they make honey, which is a superfood with many uses. You can turn it into mead, and people have been doing that for centuries. And most importantly, again, they pollinate the crops that make up our food supply. But first, let's talk about honey. Honey is a naturally delicious superfood that has many health benefits. There's an article on themanual.com, last accessed on November 17th, which tells us that honey is full of antioxidants, and adding it to our diets can boost immunity, aid in digestion, actually reduce allergies, and lower blood pressure. So there's lots of significant benefits there. And also switching sweetener using honey in lieu of regular sugar has many benefits as well. There's an article on healthline.com, last accessed on November 17th, that tells us that although honey does have more calories than regular sugar, it is also sweeter, so less of it can be used, and it doesn't have the same impact on blood sugar as traditional sugar does. So just generally all around better. Now, honey is also, again, naturally delicious. And one of the unique things about honey is the flavor changes based on the source of the pollen the bees use. So hopefully you can see this. I brought two different examples with me today. One of them is actually an orange blossom honey, and the other is a clover honey. So that's the type of pollen that the bees use to make each of these. And not only is the color drastically different, but the flavor is as well. So chances are, if you don't like honey, maybe there's another one out there that you could try that tastes completely different and you would like it. Of course, honey can be used as a topping, a condiment, if you will, or you can cook with it as well. Add it to any of your favorite traditional recipes and see what it does. I personally even put a little bit in my spaghetti sauce. So now that we've talked about honey as a superfood, let's introduce you to mead. Mead is a delicious alcoholic beverage made from honey that has historical significance as well. So essentially, mead is very similar to wine. The method of making it is the same. The main difference being that, of course, wine uses grapes or another fruit as its base, whereas mead uses honey. And it's been around for a very long time. There's actually an article on glutto.com, which was last accessed on November 17th, which tells us that there's archaeological evidence showing us that mead has been around since at least 7000 BC. That's pretty incredible. I actually brought a couple examples of it with me today as well. This has not been around since 7000 BC. This was made right here in Virginia a lot more recently, but this is something you can purchase. They have lots of different types. They do tastings just like a winery, so see if that's something you might enjoy. And this is actually comes from a batch that I made right in my kitchen. There's lots of people who like to make mead at home as well. Back to the historical significance. Mead holds a place of great importance to Scandinavian people in the Viking Age. There's actually a word from that time that we still use today. So dictionary.com, last accessed on November 17th, tells us the word honeymoon comes from the practice of gifting a newlywed couple a month's worth or a moon's worth of mead or honey wine, so honeymoon. This celebrated the union, of course. In addition to that, it was thought to contribute to the happiness of the new marriage as well as to increase the chances of conception, for the village or the population at the time to grow. So it was a custom that dates back to then for good luck. So now that we've talked about mead, let's talk about the most vital function that honeybees play in our lives, and that is pollinating the crops that make up the food supply. Bees are the primary pollinator of the entire world's food supply in regards to fruits and vegetables. We cannot live without them. BBC.com, in an article last accessed on November 17th, actually tells us that honeybees are responsible for pollinating 70% of the food that feeds 90% of the people on this earth. That's just an incredible number. And experts almost unanimously agree that we would be completely unable to sustain the population in the world today if something were to happen to the bees. And animals wouldn't be exempt from this either. That same article from BBC.com, last access till November 17th, tells us that all of the animals that depend on the vegetation pollinated by honeybees would be lost as well. And of course, that would have just devastating effects throughout the entire food chain. So today, we've talked about why bees are such a wonderful and vital part of our lives. Honeybees are one of our most precious resources because, of course, they make honey, which is a superfood with many uses. It can be turned into mead and has for centuries. And most importantly, they pollinate the world's food supply, which means a great deal to each and every one of us. So thank you. I hope you learned quite a bit about honeybees today.